Welcome to Kanata Connections. I'm David Watts. I am Kanata, and I, that is we. Villages of life that stretch from sea to sea to sea. A human constellation, as long as the rivers run. Kanata, Kanacha, Canadian. We are Canadian. 4 more Kanata traits. In the past episode, we looked at the first 4 of 8 Kanata traits, qualities or characteristics that we may share individually with others of the human community, but that, taken together, distinguish us as peoples living in the north half of Turtle Island or North America. These were, first, the origin and spirit of our name, Kanata, an indigenous word for village or meeting place and places, and part of what a Canadian communicator called the global village. The fact that we're a constellation of villages, regions, First Nations, and other entities, not a union, Reich, republic, or other structure to impose superficial unity or standardize. That we are a continuity, an evolving, not revolutionary state that traces its origins to one event, upheaval, document, or declaration that divides us into we and they, and we're a balance of feminine masculine spirit in a mix of First Nations, the influence of queens who reigned 70% of the last 185 years when most public leaders were men. These subtle, symbolic traits are deeply ingrained subconsciously, foundational to who we are. Today we're going to focus on 4 more traits that derive from the earlier 4. Though subtle, too, they are less abstract, like tips of an iceberg we don't doubt is there but may argue over. They are an importance of connection, a tolerance for ambiguity, a sense of vulnerability, and the fact that what holds us together as peoples is symbolic and analogic, not literal and digital. Let us look at each of them. Connection is our prime motivator. To us, what freedom is to other peoples. There would not be a second transcontinental country in Turtle Island without this impulse. The U.S. colonies that won independence by force thought they'd kicked the British out of North America just as they believed Quebec would join their revolution. They thoroughly expected the patchwork of provinces and territories to the north would join up one by one until the states reached the pole. They didn't know about our waterways. A network of rivers, lakes, and streams cross-stitched the land to the north from east to west. Indigenous guides and birch bark canoes opened this up to French and Scots fur traders. It was possible to paddle and portage cross-country without having to walk more than a kilometer from one body of water to the next. The railways followed the waterways 93 years after Alexander Mackenzie painted his name on a rock by the Pacific Ocean. We may think we know the story from here on, but we got it backwards. The railway was not built to join a country, that came as a byproduct. British Columbia was thinking of joining the United States. Ontario was largely indifferent. We are Canada. If they want to go, let them. There wasn't the population or potential revenue in between for investors to fund a 3,600-kilometer rail line simply to extend the Kanata moniker from Montreal to the west coast of the continent. The reason Kanata extends cross-country was international. The Northwest Passage explorers had been seeking 400 years. Western Canada was on a great circle route that was the shortest distance from Europe to Asia. With steamships on both oceans and a 6-day portage by rail, Canadian Pacific offered a 21-day passage from London to China. No one else could do this. This international passage shaped our peoples and spirit. Workers from Europe and Asia who came to build the line, some under appalling conditions, could stay to start a new life leading to a multicultural society. Our living on a global highway, its slogan, Canadian Pacific spans the world, drew others to invest and migrate. Long before this, people here had to hang together to survive winter. Some, like Tet Joan, Yellowhead, and Maskupatoon, crossed lines at the cost of their lives. To cross lines to connect, and even more to live together, requires a tolerance for ambiguity, another derivative trait. Our Kanata constellation teems with differences from the different traditions that make it up. In other places, they'd be seen as contradictions, either-or choices. Here we've managed to work around and even incorporate them in creative combinations. We've blended parliamentary tradition that rests on unwritten conventions with federalism that requires a written division of powers. We have British common law and French Code Civil. We have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms and a legislative override, the notwithstanding clause. In wartime, we had conscription if necessary, but not necessarily conscription, to buffer its impact in Quebec. In the last 20 years, Parliament adopted a separatist resolution recognizing the Québécois as a nation, amended to read within a united Canada. Our two major colonial streams, English and French, were often at war in Europe for more than 1,000 years. They and two other nations on the shield of our coat of arms were at war more often than not. Here, they're but a sample of a more diverse multicultural mosaic. This list could go on and on. A third derived trait is a sense of vulnerability to the land and the elements that enable us to live in harmony with them. First Nations consider this a foundational trait that sustained them longer than the line of civilizations that came here to colonize. Many newcomers' cultures view vulnerability as a sign of weakness. As we grow from tolerance for ambiguity to a deeper appreciation and embracing each other in our differences, we're recognizing the strength it is. Experiencing vulnerability to the land and the vividness of life is possible for us all in Kanata. Even our three largest cities, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, are within a 90-minute drive north into the wilds. Other regions and centers have wilderness areas, forests, river valleys, and national parks where we can let go the layers we wear to insulate ourselves from urban buzz. A final trait is realizing Kanata is best experienced interactively, not analytically, symbolically, not literally, and analogically, not digitally. This last pair is a metaphor, not to stop you from digital photography or journaling on an iPad. I do believe that cursive writing, for those who have it, is a smoother, more flowing mind-body connection than keyboarding. The either-or, likes or dislikes of social media emit more than they tell us. Statistics of gross domestic product or unemployment or inflation tell us less than knowing someone who's been impacted by them. To enter and share the Kanata experience takes all our senses. Artists, musicians, dancers, and gymnasts, storytellers and sculptors can pool their talents to tell us more than any one stream of expertise. As individuals, we need to go out into the wilds and sit in stillness, observing until, as Confederation poet Archibald Lampman ended his stanzas on heat, my thoughts grow keen and clear. For Kanata Connections, I'm David Watts.
Nous sommes Kanata, au long des rivières, les villages lumineux au-delà des frontières, a human constellation as long as the rivers run. Kanata, Kanata, Canadien, we are Canadian.